What's poppin', Ven Gang? Today I want to critique a video by the totally legitimate Prager University about capitalism being the dominant system and the best system. The person in the video is Nikki Haley. I'm not gonna interrupt her that much and finish her points, but I will do some interjections because I did write notes about this video on a piece of paper. Um, and without further ado, let's just jump into the video.
There are many in the West, including many who should know better, who find it difficult, unpopular, or just plain embarrassing to defend capitalism. I take the opposite view. We should double down on it. For a very simple reason. It remains not just the best, but the only chance for the least fortunate in the world to make life better for themselves and their children. And the more we see of capitalism's rival, socialism, the more proof we have that capitalism is the way we want to go. I've seen this over and over again, from my own childhood to my time as governor of South Carolina to most recently and most dramatically during my tenure as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. I grew up in South Carolina as the daughter of Indian immigrants. My mom started a small shop selling clothes and gifts that grew into a successful business. She showed my brothers, my sister, and me what it meant to live the American dream.
Okay, I'll pause it here first. Um, so her mother was originally a teacher and her father was a professor. And then yes, her mother, she's not lying or anything. Her mother did start this boutique shop for clothing. Um, um, but the interesting thing about her mother's business was it went under in 2008 due to the financial crisis, which I would argue would be mainly capitalism's fault. Maybe like if not capitalism, what she's saying, like doubling down on capitalism, which I assume is doubling down on free markets, which unregulated markets definitely led to the 2008 financial crisis, at least to some degree. So yeah, that's my first interjection. I'll full screen. I probably should have full screened earlier, but yeah.
As my mother's story so vividly illustrates, America is a country where people can find jobs that match their talents and passions. Some Americans take this for granted. The rest of the world envies it.
Okay, I will take issue with that statement because much of the world uh has have the ability to start businesses and whatnot. The U.S. is not close to like any of the best. Other countries have much better social mobility. I think I have a graph which shows income mobility, which is for how many generations it takes low-income families to reach average income. We see with the Scandinavian countries, which are have big uh, a large amount of public spending and welfare spending, it at most takes like 3 generations. And we see a country like the US could take, on average, it takes 5 generations. So this is nothing unique to the United States.
As governor of South Carolina, I marveled at capitalism's power to improve lives. Our pro-free market policies helped bring in more than $20 billion in investment and created jobs in every county of the state. Those jobs provide dignity and purpose. And as I often say, when you give a person a job, you take care of a family. During my time as the U.S. ambassador to the UN, I was reminded that not every country enjoys the same freedom and prosperity as America. More than 1.5 billion people still suffer under socialist regimes. In 2018, I stood on the Simon Bolivar Bridge at the border of Venezuela and Colombia. I watched thousands of Venezuelans cross into Colombia for the only meal they might have that day. I held a beautiful baby girl. Her mother told me all she wanted for her daughter was a future of freedom. They were one of millions of Venezuelan families whose lives have been destroyed by the country's socialist policies.
So it really doesn't seem like Venezuela's downfall was caused by socialism. It more seems what happened to Venezuela was an over-reliance on the oil industry. The oil industry crashed. That led to the government hyperinflating the currency. And while I do not think U.S. sanctions are the sole reason for the condition of Venezuela's in, they are definitely uh, a reason that exacerbated the crisis, which probably led to many people moving to Colombia. Uh, so yeah, that's my point there.
So imagine my dismay to find that socialism has become trendy here in America. American socialists claim they seek a more enlightened socialism, like those found in Scandinavian countries. But those countries are not socialist. They're capitalist and offer large welfare benefits.
Okay, then w- why can't we do them? If if your claim is capitalist, why can't we also try? I mean, I'm not a social democrat, as like many people who advocate for the Nordic model would say. But like I think I really see this huge fallacy with right wingers whenever they are like, oh, do you know the Scandinavian countries are actually not socialist and they're capitalist? I mean, like, okay, can like at least can we have healthcare? But I'll let her continue.
But ironically, to make their system work, they've had to repeatedly slash their corporate tax rates. Denmark has cut its corporate rate by more than half since the 1990s. Other democracies,
Okay, I take issue with this because while the Trump tax cuts did cut corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%, um, we see uh, that the effective tax rate for corporations has always been fairly low. Even before the Trump tax cuts, they were under 20%. The Nordic countries have much more streamlined tax systems, which probably lead to there not being that huge of a disparity between the actual corporate tax rate and effective tax rates. So I think that point is sort of dumb. But yeah, let's continue.
including Israel, India, and the UK, experimented with socialism, only to abandon it. And
Okay. Um. So. Um. For India, in India's case, India did used to be a centrally planned economy. Um. It was basically forced to liberalize its economy due to the fall of the USSR. Uh, I'm not a big fan of centrally planning, so I'm neutral for India's liberalization. I think they definitely could have done better in some aspects. For the UK, the UK was like it had socialist movements, but never really like there was no economic planning or anything like close to the USSR, and it generally seemed like those socialist movements benefited the United Kingdom with systems like the NHS, which are extremely popular in the United Kingdom, and uh, you could argue they were a good thing for they. I mean, they definitely were great things for United Kingdom. For Israel, it's sort of complicated how the current state of Israel is, but Israel used to have like more communes, and it generally seems like those communes were positive, but like nationalism and other factors led to the creation of a capitalist state of Israel.
only then did they thrive.
If by thrive you mean the money number goes up, I guess.
The results are in. Socialism, however you want to define it, has failed everywhere it's
Uh, you literally only went over you went over Venezuela, you went over India, Israel, and UK, and you're gonna say all socialist. Like, there's no nuance. Like, PragerU doesn't provide any nuance into, oh, what was India like when it was presumably socialist? What was Israel like? What was the United Kingdom like? What certain policies of Venezuela led to its economy? Yeah, and you can't just like slap a failure sticker.
been tried. A handful of elites sitting in a government office can never outthink millions of business owners and consumers making millions of individual choices every moment of every day. You'd think we'd have gotten the message by now. An entire generation of American adults are too young to remember the suffering socialism caused during the last century. Instead of teaching students to reject our country's history and founding ideals, schools should have a required class on the history and collapse of the Soviet Union.
Yo, I actually agree with this because I think this would help solve a lot of misinformation about socialism and the USSR in general that many people have. But of course, like Nikki Haley's thing would probably be like, oh, the USSR did too much government stuff and it fell in 1991 because America good. But I generally do think teaching more broad history about the Soviet Union could clear up many misconceptions that people have about it.
Young people at least have the excuse of being miseducated. But what does one say about corporate CEOs who give in to social trends rather than standing up for a system that their own businesses and workers depend on? I'm talking about advocates of so called stakeholder capitalism, a philosophy that retains the word capitalism but abandons its meaning. Recently, the chief executives of some of America's largest companies changed their self definition. They said companies should focus on customers, workers, and communities. This is just politically correct nonsense. These CEOs know that's what successful businesses already do. It's what they have to do to survive in our capitalist system. A company that cheats its customers, mistreats its workers, and abuses its community won't be around long.
Uh, do we have to go through a list? Walmart, Amazon, like that. This is just not true.
Profits are what keep a business going and allow it to thrive. They generate the funds needed for more job creation. You don't need
Okay.
an advanced economics degree to understand this. So, why are these CEOs so anxious to embrace this in name only capitalism? Probably because they think they need to placate the noisemakers on the socialist.
Literally tell me one company, a single company which advocates, oh, a single large company which advocates for socialism. You will not find one because socialism is an enemy to corporations. W- Like if you mean like companies like doing social trends like BLM or like supporting the LGBTQ movement, maybe, but like I really don't see a problem with that, and you won't be able to point me to a company which actually supports socialism?
Left. But that's a fool's game. The left is never satisfied.
True.
So let's defend what works. And what works is capitalism. Until the
Mhm.
unforeseeable shutdown of the economy as a response to the coronavirus, it was working better than ever. Unemployment was at a 50-year low. Wages were rising at the fastest rate in a decade. More women and minorities were working than ever before. Poverty was at a record low in America. Let's get back to that as quickly as possible.
We also had 500,000 people on the street. Most Americans couldn't afford $1,000 emergency. Most Americans are working paycheck to paycheck. Wow, what a strong economy. We should go back to capitalism.
There's only one way to do it: capitalism. I'm Nikki Haley for Prager University.
Yeah, and thanks for watching. I guess this is a video. I I guess I'll link these charts and I'll also, I mean, if you guys want, I'll also link this cool extension which lets you boost the speed of videos up to 16%. That means 16 times the original video speed if you like for some reason want to watch videos that fast. But yeah, thanks for watching and bye.